I was born into a rich and important family in Tyrone, Ireland. I was the younger of two daughters, and we were the only children. My sister was 6 years older than me, so we didn't play much together when I was young. I was only 12 years old when she got married. I remember the day of her wedding well. Many people came to the wedding, all of them laughing, singing, and happy. I felt a little sad when my sister left with her new husband, Mr. Carew. She was always very nice to me, nicer than my mother. I cried a little when she went away to her new home in Dublin. My mother and father didn't love me. They wanted sons and weren't interested in me. A year after my sister got married, I got a letter from Mr. Carew. He said that my sister was sick and wanted to come home to Tyrone to stay with us. I was sad that she was sick, but I was also really happy about her visit. They're leaving Dublin on Sunday. My father told me they're arriving here on Tuesday evening. Tuesday came and it was a very long day. Hour after hour came and went, and I listened all the time for my sister and her husband. The sky was dark, and soon it was midnight, but I couldn't sleep. I listened and waited. Suddenly at 1 o'clock in the morning, I heard a noise far away. I ran out of my bedroom and down to the living room. "They're here. They're here." I called to my father. We quickly opened the front door to see better. We waited there for a few minutes and we heard the noise again. It was somebody crying far away in the night. But we saw nothing. There were no lights and no people there. We went outside waiting to say hello and to help my sister. My sister came with her bags, but there was no one there. No lights, no people. We went outside to say hello and to help her, but she wasn't there. I looked at my father, and he looked at me. We didn't understand. I heard a noise, and he said, "Yes." I answered, "I heard it too, Father." But where were they? We went back into the house without another word. We were suddenly afraid. The next day, a man arrived and told us that my sister was dead. She had been feeling very ill on Monday, and on Tuesday, at about 12 a.m. when she passed away, right as we were waiting outside the house. I'll never forget that night. For the next 2 years, I was pretty down. I guess you could say I stopped living. I didn't want to do anything or speak to anyone. Mr. Carew soon married another young woman in Dublin. I was pretty upset that he forgot my sister so quickly. I was now the only child of a rich and important family. Before I was 14, men started to visit our home. They wanted to meet me. Maybe they wanted to marry me, but I didn't like any of these men. I thought I was too young to be married when I was 16. My mother took me to Dublin, a big city. She said we'd meet richer and more interesting men than the ones back home in Tyrone. We could easily find me a good husband in Dublin. I began to be happier. I met a lot of friendly people and I went dancing every evening. A lot of young men came to speak to me and asked me to dance. I liked talking to them. I started to live and laugh again, and I didn't think about my dear sister all the time. My mother, bless her heart, wasn't as happy as I was. She wanted me to find a husband quickly. One night before I went to bed, she came into my room and said, "Do you know Lord Glenfallen?" "Oh yes," I answered. "He's that ugly old man from Kurilla." "Oh, Fanny," my mother said quickly. "He's not ugly and he's not old. He's from a very rich and important family, too. He wants to marry you. He loves you, loves me, wants to marry me, but he's making a mistake, Mother." "I don't love him," I said. "I can't marry somebody I don't love." "Think about it, Fanny," my mother answered quietly. "He's a good man. He wants to marry you. You're a very lucky young woman." My mother left the room, and I sat quietly for a long time. Lord Glenfallen was a nice, friendly man. I didn't love him, but I did like him. He always talked about interesting things. I never felt happy at home with my mother and father, but I always felt better when I talked to him. The next morning, when I saw my mother, and I said, "I do," to Lord Glenfallen. We got married the next spring, and 2 days after our wedding, we said goodbye to my family and left Tyrone. 3 days later, we arrived in Kurilla, and I saw my husband's beautiful house for the first time. It was near a river, and there were so many trees and flowers in the garden. Birds sang in the trees, and the sky was blue. I stood next to him and looked at it all, and I felt so happy. "My love," said my husband, "you must come in. Meet Martha. She's a wonderful woman who cooks and cleans and knows everything about the house." So, we went into the house, and I met Martha. She's a friendly old woman with the sweetest, smiling blue eyes. She showed me around the house, and I felt excited to be there. It was such a happy place. Women sang in the kitchen, men built fires in the living rooms, and there were dogs and cats everywhere. "Come with me now, madam," said Martha, and she led me to my bedroom. Then, we took up my bags and I got to wash up before dinner. I followed her, and soon we arrived at a big brown door. "This is your room," she said with a warm smile. She opened the door, and I stood and looked inside. I was suddenly overcome with a feeling of fear. Something big and black stood in front of me. I didn't know what it was. It looked like an old coat, but there was no one inside. I jumped back quickly, feeling afraid. I moved away from the door. "Is something wrong, Madam Martha?" I asked. "Nothing is wrong," she replied kindly. "Perhaps it's nothing." I answered quickly, but I thought I saw something in there. "I thought I saw a big black coat when you opened the door." Martha's face went white with fear. "What's wrong?" I asked her. "Now you look frightened," she said. "Something bad is going to happen. When someone sees the black coat in this house, we know that something bad is going to happen soon to the Glenfallen family." "I saw the black coat when I was a child," I told her. "And the next morning, old Lord Glenfallen died." "Something bad is going to happen," she said. "I know it." We went downstairs for dinner. I felt unhappy, happy, and afraid, but I didn't say anything to my husband. I really wanted to forget about the black coat and be happy again. The next day, Lord Glenfallen and I went for a lovely walk together around the house and gardens. I was really keen to get to know my new home better. I like this house and all the people here, I said, and I'm really happy to be here with you. It's so much better than Tyrone, my husband, who was quiet for a long time. He walked with his head down, thinking. Then suddenly he turned to me, took my hand, and said, "Fanny, listen to me, listen carefully, Fanny, I have to ask you something. Please, never go into the rooms at the back of the house or into the little garden by the back door. Do you understand me?" His face was pale and unhappy. I understood his words, but I didn't understand why he was suddenly so different here at Cahergilla. He never smiled or laughed anymore. Perhaps the back of the house was dangerous, but he didn't want to talk about it anymore. We went back. I went back to the house without speaking, and again I tried to forget his words and to be as happy as I was before. It was about a month later that I met the other woman for the first time. One day I wanted to go for a walk in the gardens. It was a beautiful day, and I ran up to my room after lunch to get my hat and coat. But when I opened the door of my room, there was a woman sitting near the fire. She was about 40 years old, and she wore a black coat. Her face was white, and when I looked closely, I saw that "Madam," I said, "this is my room. There's been a mistake. Your room is this way." "Mistake? No. I don't think so. I don't think there's been a mistake. Where is Lord Glenfallen?" "I'll find him in the living room." "But who are you? And why are you in my room?" "Tell Lord Glennon that I want him." "I must tell you that I am Lady Glenfallen. I want you to leave my room now." "Lady Glenfallen, you are not. You are not." "I'm sorry," she cried, hitting my face very hard. Out for help, and soon Lord Glennon arrived. I ran out of the room as he ran in, and I waited outside to listen at the door. I didn't hear every word, but I could tell that Lord Glenfallen was upset and the blind woman was upset too when he came in. I asked him who that woman was and why she was in my bedroom, but my husband didn't answer me. His face was white with fear. His only words were, "Forget her," but I couldn't forget her. Every day it was more and more difficult to talk to her. My husband was always quiet, but now he was sad and afraid. He sat for hours looking into the fire with his unhappy eyes, but I didn't know why, and he didn't want to tell me. One morning after breakfast, Lord Glenfallen suddenly said, "I have the answer. We must go away to another country, to France or Spain." "What do you think, Fanny?" he asked. "I don't know," I replied. "Why must we leave Cahergilla?" I didn't understand, and I didn't want to. I felt like I was going too far away from my mom and dad in Tyrone. They were getting older, and my dad was sometimes sick. They didn't love me as much as I wanted them to, but I wanted to be close to them. I thought about it all day, and I didn't know what to say to my husband when he got back in the evening and came to dinner. I didn't say anything after dinner. I was really tired, so I went up to my bedroom early. I wanted to have a good night's sleep and think about it all again the next day. I closed my eyes and went to sleep, but I didn't. Sleep well, sweetheart, because I had a strange dream. I woke up suddenly, and everything was dark and very quiet. But I could see somebody at the end of my bed. There was a hand with a light, and behind the light was the blind woman. She had a knife in her other hand. I tried to get out of bed and run to the door, but she stopped me. "If you want to live, don't move," she said. "Tell me. Did Lord Glenfallen marry you?" she asked. "Yes, he did," I replied. "Oh, that's sad," she said. "I don't think he told you that he had a wife." "I'm his wife, not you, young woman," I said. "You must leave this house tomorrow. If you stay here, you'll see this knife. I'm going to kill you with it." Then she left the room. I tiptoed out of the room without making a sound. I didn't sleep again that night. When morning came, I told my husband everything. I asked him, "Who is the blind woman?" He told me that she said she is your wife, and that I am not your wife. "Did you go into the rooms at the back of the house?" My husband asked me angrily. "I told you that you must never go there, but I didn't." I answered, "I was." All night long, she came to me. "Please, tell me what is going on." My husband's face was white again, and he didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "No, she is not my wife." "You are. Don't listen to her. She doesn't know what she is saying." He left the room. I ran to find Martha. I didn't like this house anymore. My husband was a difficult man, and I didn't. Who was the blind woman? I wanted to know everything. "Don't cry, madam," said Martha when I found her. "Sit down and listen to me. What I am going to tell you is not very nice. The blind woman, the woman in the black coat, is dead. You saw her ghost. She was married to your husband and she was Lady Glenfallen. Nobody knows how she died. Her bedroom. The room was at the back of the house. Someone saw your husband with a knife in his hand on the night she died, but did he kill her? Nobody knows. When we found her, the knife was on the floor next to her and her eyes. It's so sad. Someone cut her eyes out after she died. Perhaps he didn't want her to see his other women, his next wife, you, or me. I didn't wait to speak to my husband. Once more, I left that day. I was too afraid to stay another minute at Kurilla. I knew that the blind woman was going to come back again and kill me. I said goodbye to Martha, took my bags, and told my driver to take me back to Tyrone. I'm happy living here with my mother and father now. The house is quiet, I sleep well each night, and they are friendlier to me than they were before. Sometimes my dear departed sister visits me at night, but I am never afraid. She tells me that the blind woman is trying to find me at Kurilla and that she wants to kill me. She is jealous of me, but she can never find me there. She must wait for the next lady, Glenfallen. The voiceover in this video is given by English 5 Days Copying or Re. Just a heads up, uploading is totally forbidden. Thanks.